stifle the truth.
Right down here in Tahiti, just having a great time, but it's time to get back to work here. Got Welcome to Truth versus News here on July 27th, 7/27, 2020. And it's really something. We've got 2020 vision for you here, folks. And we also have the fact that America really has been ruled by lies, and truth is completely absent, and the American people tolerate it. Rule by lies is now the American way, and when truth is politicized, all is lost. And I've seen that even on the news today, that the media is propaganda. That's all it is. CNN, MSNBC are really propaganda. And it looks like this COVID-19 is really just a cold and a lie. And I want to say one little word here that I have in front of me, that the medical industry, in direct cooperation with governments, medical and government, and the media in all countries, is all about making profits. So it's something about there, by keeping people divided in fear and anxiety and being sick. And this requires your unquestioning blind obedience for them to be successful, wearing masks and things. You must break out of that trance of societal death cult. Otherwise, the death cult will be breaking you, folks. And with that, I want to introduce the most dangerous mind in America, Jim Fetzer. He's energized everybody when it comes to pursuing truth and exposing frauds, and the most articulate mind in America. Second Lieutenant retired Scott Bennett, who's written the most fascinating book that is really breaking the back of the cultists here and there, and the corruption in the military. So, gentlemen, lead on.
Thank you, Don. You had no idea how accurate it was when you labeled this show Truth versus News.
Incorporated.
Meanwhile, there are more riots and lawlessness in cities across the nation. It's frankly stunning. The police have declared a riot in Portland as the federal courthouse fence was breached. This was on Sunday. 2 days earlier, we had the report of Portland rioters lighting the courthouse on fire with officers barricaded inside. I mean, how bad is that? Meanwhile, a BLM protester in Austin who declared, "People who hate us are too big pussies to actually do anything about it," met his match when someone got out of a car and shot him in the head. Meanwhile, breaking, rioters set fire to Oakland courthouse and attacked the police station there. It's sweeping the country. Chaz in flames. Police declare a riot in the former autonomous zone in Seattle. This was declaring a riot Saturday following violent demonstration in the city's Capitol Hill neighborhood. This is where you reside, my friend. Meanwhile,
Yep.
Absolutely outrageous. The United Nations has ordered the president to stand down in Portland. For over a month, the UN has been carrying out a human rights investigation against the US over systemic racism. They ordered the US to crack down on police officers, otherwise the UN would mount an intervention. This is what the UN Human Rights Council said last month, but when they discovered only 9 unarmed Black people had been shot by police last year, and of them only 2 were not in the process of attacking a police officer or bystander, the UN shifted its strategy. They can't launch a blue helmet intervention on such a flimsy basis. So now they're investigating the Trump administration's handling of protesters. There are plenty of peaceful protesters marching in early and mid-June, but they have long since stopped being peaceful, stopped being about racial justice or George Floyd long ago. The UN nevertheless believes it has an opening to intervene in our country's affair. They have delivered a formal stand-down order to the Trump administration, ordering the president to cease federal officers from using non-lethal force against peaceful protesters in Portland. This is completely outrageous. Scott, your thoughts?
Well, I'm wearing my old shamag, Jim, not because I'm prepared for combat, but just simply because it's easier to wear this when I go out. And the Nazi fascists force you to wear a mask, so that's the purpose of that. Is
That's beautiful.
the
That's
old
beautiful,
military,
Scott.
the old military gear I wore when I was in the Army. I just thought it would be easier to carry it than masks. But I do think this is an alarming story. I don't think, of course, it's gonna take root. I don't think the United Nations blue helmets, for which I'm very familiar with, are stupid enough to open up a direct invasion or intervention in the United States. That's why the Japanese emperor never wanted to do it, and no other foreign enemy has ever set foot in the United States, because they knew they would be rousing, giants beyond description. The American people are the most well armed psychologically and physically, and I think this is always going to be our preserving factor. But there are disturbing trends with the communist, Marxist, socialist agenda, the Black Lives Matter, which has been hijacked in pursuit of that, the Black Lives Matter statement of mission, which incorporates LGBTQ, gay, transgender, lesbian, homosexual rights, force feeding that to children as part of their agenda, the destruction of the traditional nuclear two-parent family between a man and a woman, a husband and wife, mother and father. These are sick, demonic ideologies and self-hating, destructive, personal suicide ideas and ideologies, and they need to be rejected entirely, absolutely, and eternally by the American people. And there's been great testimonies and videos and lectures that have been given in the past that we're, of course, rediscovering, in which clear-minded academics and scholars and intelligence people present a very surgical, exact analysis of the communist mindset and ideology, and how it is pulled into a society under the Trojan horse of socialism and the Kumbaya, Brave New World, 1984 mentality of a paradise, of a Logan's Run, and in fact the opposite results. The dystopian misery and want and corruption are all unleashed, because the human, as George Washington and the founding fathers recognized, the human race is conflicted, and there is sin, there is lust, the heart is desperately wicked above all things, who can know it? And laws and rules and government by the people, for the people, it's a very difficult thing, but the only way to balance it is absolute freedom with responsibility. And this communist, Leninist, Marxist ideology is looking to take down all freedom in exchange for this this ideology and government system that's never worked. And of course, Russia recognizes that. They escaped the menace of communism, which we infected them with, I think, in the early part of the century. And that's one of the reasons the Democrats hate them, and so many others do. But I think at the end of the day, all of this is going to be pulled back into the tide as the sandcastles of this Chaz and Chop delusion is disintegrated, and these people disappear with a whimper that is characteristic of their personality. Jim?
Scott, it's just stunning. Go ahead, Don.
Real quickly, the sign behind me, and the way it appears now, is that it's no longer Black Lives Matter, but they misspelled it, actually. The way it's being happened in the media, I think it's Black LIES Matter nowadays. And I say that because it looks like there's not very much truth in what's going on.
Nice.
Am I right?
Don. Meanwhile, they're trying to blame this on the far right. It's completely absurd. An increasing percentage of plans and attacks in the U.S. are linked to far right activity. This is completely outrageous. Boogaloo on the Loose expert warned Congress about extremism on the right. You don't see any of that going on in Portland or Seattle or Chicago or New York or anywhere else. It's all on the left. So, of course, they got to try to shift attention, claiming the facts are right now right-wing extremism is the bigger problem. That's where the violence is coming from. How bad is that? Said Heidi Barrick, a recent co-founder of the Global Project Against Hate and Extremism and former director of the Southern Poverty Law Center's Intelligence Project. This is simply absurd. Here are more illustrations. Terrified woman mobbed by violent protesters hits gas to escape. Police won't arrest her and let her drive on home. More proof the left is completely removed from reality. Violent leftists in DC Metro mobbed a woman who tried to get away from the street protest. The mob banged on her car, beat her windows, jumped on her hood, screamed at her, threatened the poor woman who just wanted to escape their violence. Then the protest mob was outraged that police would not arrest her, try to follow the logic. This is your modern day Democratic Party, which wants to abolish the police. Meanwhile, the Seattle police chief to residents and business owners, you're on your own against violent protesters, because the city hall, the mayor has declared the city council won't allow them to use the tools, including pepper spray, commonly used to disperse crowds that have turned violent, which means that the police themselves have no way to protect themselves. Meanwhile, we see if everyone's on their own, this is what we're going to get as a consequence. Check this out.
So tell me who you are.
Well, I mean, free Americans, yeah.
And what are you doing today?
We were out here yesterday too, down on the original protest site. So basically, you've seen the records that cops keep, and cops are a lot less likely to try and tread on people's rights when there's other armed Americans with them. So we figured it's about damn time that some, or at least I figure that it's about damn time some heavily armed rednecks stood with fellow citizens.
And why are you protecting this store?
Well, I mean, this wasn't exactly a specified action.
We've been kind of, so we just kind of ended up here.
We've been moving around and just trying to see what's what without getting necessarily completely slapped by massive groups of people. And while we were walking, somebody mentioned that there were some guys at the back of us actually wanted to know if they were over here to buy something, and they said that they're closed and they're defending their businesses. Oh yeah, Target's on fire.
Yep.
By the way.
Yeah.
But and anyway, so we heard that, we're like, well, we better kit up and go see if these guys need help. And it turns out these guys are out here with machetes and shattered windows trying to keep looters out of the business because cops can't get in here. And so, you know, I figure before they were cops, they were just Americans. So here we are.
Or during the LA riots.
Or during the LA riots. Collateral damage, I guess.
Everyone protected their own stuff. That's where, you know, you got the term rooftop Korean.
So bottom line, justice for Floyd, and I hope they stop looting at some point. If there were more of us, we could go stop them from looting, but it's just us four.
Yeah, we definitely don't agree with the looting.
Yeah, no, looting.
But we do agree with the cause of the protest.
Yeah, definite protesting.
Right, before there were cops, there were just Americans. Scott, your thoughts?
Well, I have to admit, Jim, it always kind of chokes me up when I see former military guys standing there doing their duty, their service to their community, and you have a couple of white guys, and then you have a couple of black guys right behind them, not side by side, behind them. That's an enormous position of trust to have someone behind you with a weapon. And these white guys aren't afraid because they're comrades, they're fellow soldiers, they're fellow patriots, they're defending for the Constitution and righteousness against anarchy and chaos and madness and destruction. So I get a little bit tear jerk when I see that, because it's so opposite of what the lies and the propaganda, the disgusting mainstream media and these communist protesters and the BLM and all of these lunatics, these fanatics, these angry, raging mobs who are on medication, or they've not been given enough milk in their Cheerios, or they're spoiled brats, or they've grown up with absolute disgusting, pathetic school systems that have brainwashed them with every poison, every lie you can imagine. And of course, we're responsible for it. So this is a time of national, I think, national prayer and fasting, national outrage at the same time, and a national moment of reflection to say, how did we get here? This didn't just pop up. Oh yeah, we've sown these seeds for 20, 30 years. We have 2 generations of soy boys, of effeminate, half-wit boys that don't know what it means to be a man. We've outlawed school sports. We forced the integration of school sports. So you've got girls and boys playing football together. You've got all of this mixing when instead we should have been encouraging the natural development of boys and the natural development of girls into productive, healthy, natural human beings. And instead, we have allowed liberal leftists with multiple degrees from crap universities and crap studies go in there and start regurgitating their garbage and calling it advanced social academic theory and impregnating the minds of school boards and school classes. And we've generated this crop of roadkill. Kids that are worthless, kids that have no hope, kids that have no skill, no ability, no emotional maturity, that are out there jumping on cars, jumping on hoods, behaving like lunatic hoodlums. There's reports of Captagon drugs and other things showing up in their blood systems. And it's not a surprise that some of them are going to get shot and killed when they surround the wrong car, accost and abuse the wrong person, wield a firearm or fire a firearm at the wrong person, because Americans are going to and have a right to resort to their Second Amendment, their life preservation, the preservation of their property, and kill any attacker. And I don't care if he's 15 or 55 or 105. If some lunatic, left-wing, Black Lives Matter, Antifa psychopath rushes at me, rushes at my car, rushes at my family in a life-threatening manner, they're going to be shot and killed. Not wounded in the leg, not shot in the shoulder, not shot in the gut. They're going to have 2 bullets right center of mass. That's how you're trained. That's how you put down insurrections and rebellions. And maybe that's the best suppository that these Antifa leftists are going to be medically cleansed from their madness using. Go ahead.
Oh, Scott, you're absolutely right. I mean, they have no idea what they are unleashing here. It's stunning. Meanwhile, if you need any other proof to vote for Trump in November, look at the Portland chaos. These violent domestic terrorists have become used to making demands of what they want. And if those demands are not immediately met, they become the Lord of the Flies group on the island. Let's get clear on 2 issues. Federal authorities are within their jurisdiction to protect federal property. Cruising city streets and snatching people, taking them to irrigation sites without a reasonable cause, however, is not. Stopping people on the street to question them is reasonable as long as it's in plain sight and there's a reasonable cause for the stop. It's not a civil war, at least not yet. A prerequisite would include redefining American citizenships only those who hold American values. Limited government, free market, self-government, equal protection would be actual citizens. That would make it possible to regard those who don't hold those values as enemy combatants, which I don't expect to take place. On the other hand, Trump is ready-made as the law and order candidate for this election. It's shaping up a very powerful case. Here he's during an interview on Fox. I hear you talking about the cities and safety of the cities. I've offered them all, every one of them, 10 of them. We'll clean it up. We'll clean it up. In Portland, we had to do it because that was their anarchists. They even have a level of violence we haven't seen. They were going wild for 51 days, now longer. We went in, we're doing a great job. They were going to rip down the courthouse, a big federal courthouse, gorgeous federal courthouse. Meanwhile, Trump, on an interview with Sean Hannity last Thursday, signaled he has 75,000 agents ready to go into Democratic-controlled cities to stop the surging violence. Shocking to me, as a resident of Wisconsin, a Black Trump supporter was executed in broad daylight for supporting Trump. A Black man, well known for his boisterous support of President Trump, was shot and killed by an unknown assailant in Milwaukee Thursday. Burnell Trammell, 60, was seen outside his publishing company when a vehicle pulled in front of the business and he was shot and killed execution style. Here's the guy. Tragic to learn of the senseless murder of Burnell Trammell. Sincere condolences. No American should fear for their personal safety because of where they live or their political affiliation. Quite stunning. Meanwhile, There's been a call for a federal investigation after Burnett Trumbull was gunned down in a drive-by shooting in the middle of the day in Milwaukee. Stunning stuff. Scott, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think what you're witnessing, of course, is the another reason to vote for Trump. I think Trump is got to handle this in a very delicate way, because it is a delicate political tap dance. Because you do not want the left, the Democrats, calling him a tyrant, calling him a dictator, saying he's trampling on the constitutional rights of everybody, and pushing him into that camp. But at the same time, this is Trump's argument to lose. If he overreacts, if he overexerts himself, if he makes a similar comment like, well, we'll just round everybody up and then let the courts in the process, work it out later, like he did with the guns. Well, we'll just grab all the guns and then let the court process work it out later. No, you can't do that. That's a violation of the Constitution's Second Amendment. No, you can't rope up everybody who's protesting, because it sets a precedent, and it is a violation of the right to assemble and the right to peaceably petition the government for the redress of grievances. But these people that are taking baseball bats, throwing bricks and fire mortars at cops and bottles and hurting and shining lasers in their eyes, those are acts of domestic terrorism.
Yep.
They're not just vandals. They're acts of criminal terrorism, and that's how I would charge them. And I would arrest those people who engage in that, and let. You can hold them for 2 years until your case comes up, mind you. That's quite a hell of a punishment, to say you're going to be in jail for 2 years until we bring up the case for domestic terrorism. Maybe that needs to happen on solid cases. But he does have full authority to unleash the federal forces, Homeland Security, as well as Northern Command. He can unleash plainclothes military people and marshals and Homeland Security to defend federal institutions. Hell, if we want to go back there, look at what Kate Brown did in the unleashing of the FBI around the Malheur Refuge and the murder of Robert Lavoie Finicum when he was ambushed. That was certainly convenient for Kate Brown to demand the FBI and the full onslaught of federal snipers come in from Obama's Gestapo. But yet she won't allow Trump to send in the same sort of federal forces to defend property in stores and defend women who are being accosted and their cars jumped on and their children traumatized by these mad, savage hoodlums that make the movie The Road Warrior look like an Alice in Wonderland cartoon. And it's not because they're scary, it's because they're maniacs, they're idiots, they're fools. And personally, I have no sympathy for them. I would have no problem, and I don't want to go too far down to the martial applications of the Second Amendment, but I would have no problem disinfecting the entire area wherever I'm passing through of the negative energy of these people and let it ebb out in their bleeding out.
Let me illustrate how bad it is. This is the Wisconsin State Journal. This is an article about the district attorney in Dane County who happens to be black, and where the protesters showed up to object at his home. Listen to these paragraphs. Dane County District Attorney Ishmael Ozana is highlighting his identity as a black man and his family's roots in the civil rights movement after protesters came to his house for the second time in a month Saturday, this time demanding that charges be dropped against two black men and calling Ozana racist. The two black men were arrested for looting a jewelry store right downtown. They're demanding they be released. Listen to this.
Yeah,
Osman said Sunday that scores of protesters with speakers, generators, and bullhorn showed up around 7:30 p.m. Saturday and stayed for about 6 hours blasting music, shouting profanity, chanting slogans, and calling him and his family racist. How outrageous can you get? Scott, this is just ridiculous beyond belief.
But they did it peacefully.
It's standard terrorist tactics. It's using terror. It's psychologically trying to make impotent. And that's when the Second Amendment and the right to form posses, the right to form militias, the right to form deputized groups of citizens is a full constitutional right, and it's required when the Seattle police and other police don't have the means to defend property owners.
And of course, in our constitutional republic, there are processes and procedures. If you object to a statue or a monument, conduct a referendum, issue a proposal, put it on the ballot. But just to go willy-nilly and tear them down by force and then to threaten law enforcement from performing its duty, that is totally un-American, undemocratic. Right. And I guarantee it's going to carry the Democrats to defeat in 2020, unless, of course, they can steal the election, which is exactly what they plan to do.
That's their aim.
While we have developments on the coronavirus front, where the president is encouraging Americans to wear masks, warns the pandemic may get worse before it gets better. My inference is he doesn't want the Democrats to be able to screen out Trump voters from voting, casting ballots because they're not wearing masks. Trump tweets masks are patriotic, then skips wearing one at an event. Trump says he would take a vaccine himself and defends Merck's, but they haven't even been able to identify the virus. Therefore, you cannot have a vaccine that would work against it. This is all total bullshit. Meanwhile, Alex Jones made a commendable contribution by having doctors warn the COVID vaccine is dangerous and illegal to mandate. I commend him for that. Meanwhile, it's being observed very appropriately. During slavery, slaves were forced to wear masks as to symbolically mark them as not having a voice and to be owned and under the control of another person, their masters. That's what they want to impose on all of us. Scott, your thoughts?
Well, that slide is quite powerful, Jim. They should have pictures with that on there because it reminds us, that this is a psychological operation. And I would just add the president can get away with saying, look, you can wear a face covering, you can wear a scarf, you can wear a shamag, you can wear a mask if you want. Just cover, if you feel threatened, your spittle from going out on people. That's a kind thing to do. You're protecting your spittle from going out. You're also, if you're afraid of others spitting on you, you wear something, a covering. But he needs to depart from this mask. He needs to depart from the medical, the whole medical little plastic paper mask. Spin the narrative into different directions. You have choices. You have a covering. You can wear, hell, you can wear your bikini up there. You can wear whatever you want to protect you, or you can wear nothing. But Trump is doing this for political reasons, political calculations, because, again, the election comes down to the independents. The independents are not that smart. They're not sophisticated. They don't have economic degrees. They don't have any ideology. They have their feelings. That's all independents have, is their feelings. And they make their mind up the last 4 to 2 weeks before the election, and they go, oh, who am I going to vote for? Well, Trump makes me feel better. He is wearing a mask, so okay. Remember, these are the sheeple. These are the mindless, brainless sheeple that determine elections. So you have to court them, and this is what he's doing. He's calming them. He's saying, sure, I'll wear a mask. I'll take a vaccine, of course. Whatever will make you feel good. Whatever will make you check the Trump box. Please go ahead. Trust in me. So that's what he's doing. And the Democrats, like you wisely observed, Jim, are going stark raving mad, pulling their hair out, hitting themselves in hammers, and destroying their towns and the cities in the war cry of submit, let all the prisoners out of the Bastille, or we're going to burn down and loot and rape and pillage all your society. Oh, really? Let's see what the former military have to say about that. Let's see what the police say about that. Let's see what the bikers say about that. Yeah. You have more people in this country that will go out with hammers and defend with an attitude. Remember, combat, fighting is always attitude. When you're in your right frame of mind to go out and destroy the enemy that's looking to destroy you, you have something to fight and die for. They have nothing to fight and die for. And when you give them one hit in the mouth, you see these people buckle over, drop their little Apple camera, whine and cry, and scurry like rats into the shadows. Jim?
Nice. I think when they protest, if you don't let the criminals out, they're really making themselves candidates for incarceration themselves. Yeah. Meanwhile, 3 and 4
one question, Jim. If I can interrupt, one question is that back in the other countries like Pakistan and other places where there's a lot of, Islam and things, the women have for centuries worn their have jibs or whatever it's called.
The
That
veil.
covers
The
them
veil.
all up. And they're in the statistics here. Pakistan and other countries have got as much corona as we do, and they've been practicing that for centuries. What gives there? I don't know. Go ahead.
Are you saying they have no change, no difference in their infection rates, or they have a high degree
Yeah,
of infection rate
they're among the
despite
top
their
20
wearing
here.
that?
Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and the other things. They're they're right up top.
Well,
So,
that is an interesting statistic because you're all right. They do have the full-on burqas and,
yeah,
and other attire, the veils and such like that, which would of course indicate what we've been talking about before. This whole thing is amplified, exaggerated, accelerated. Now, I will say I know some people in the Middle East who have told me they have COVID-19. They come down with it and they felt very, very bad. So there is something in the wind, in the air. It could be a chemical weapons
it's a
attack for
common
all I know.
cold.
But they are afflicted with something. But you're right, it is something you fight through. Your immune system overcomes, and when you overcome it, you're ready for the next flu season. That's what human life on Earth is all about. It is not about a vaccine. It's not about getting electrodes hooked up to your temple and electroshock therapying you to get out of this. This is all needs to be rejected.
Yeah, and masks are essentially a ritual or a cultic ritual that gets you subversion, it's slavery. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Don. Meanwhile, 3 in 4 Americans back wearing masks, according to a latest poll. Support for mask wearing is overwhelming among Democrats at 89%, but even 58% of Republicans favor it as well. Rather disconcerting, all things considered. As a tally of coronavirus infections continue to climb, and this, of course, is based, as we've reported before, on the ambiguity of the difference between testing positive for antibodies, which you have because you previously had the common cold, and actually having a coronavirus for which they have not been able to isolate the virus specifically and therefore do not have a specific coronavirus test. State and local governments are trying to find a balance between restrictions to limit the virus spread, such as closing bars and indoor dining at restaurants and getting workers back on the job after many businesses were idled, millions of people left jobless. And meanwhile, as the national anthem was played, the New York Liberty and Seattle Storm walked off the floor. This is going to hurt the women's NBA massively. After all, they're ignoring the fact that the statistics do not support any of these claims. Here you have interracial violent incidents, 607,725. White on black, 59,777, or 9.8%. Black on white, 547,948, or 90% of interracial incidents. I think this mixing of sports and politics is going to prove calamitous, not only for the women's NBA, but for the NFL and the NBA. Scott, your thoughts?
Well, the fact that these sporting people too, the only reason they've been successful is because they've had coaches and people supporting their athletic development and training. These athletes have not experienced anything. They've not been hung up by trees. They've not been run over. They've not been dragged in the street. They've not had bottles cracked over their head. Some of these white people have, that you're identifying the statistics over, a 90% rate of blacks against whites. That's where most of these crimes are recorded, and 9% versus white against blacks. Yes, that makes perfect sense. Temperamentally, we understand that. But these athletes are jokes. They really are jokes. And I've considered the entire athletic system and the entire entertainment industry with sporting events as a joke, as a distraction, as a mindless exercise for idiots who want bread and circuses for the most part. And now you're blending and blurring politics in with it, and it's such hypocrisy because of the enormous money and attention and spoiled everything these athletes get, from basketball to baseball to the NFL, and they have the gall to start forgetting that And you name me one other country on the planet that blacks have been given more education, more material, more money, more attention, more jobs in Hollywood and high-level sports, making hundreds of millions of dollars. You name me one country that has given blacks more than the United States of America and let them move there. The fact is, there is no other country on the face of planet Earth, including Africa, that has given blacks more money, more attention, more training, more gifts, more education. No other country on planet Earth. And they seem to forget that. And they seem to be pushing this whole agenda of reparations and more. And it really is psychologically sick. And I'll tell you, it's going to cause, I think it's going to cause the greatest ostracization of blacks, the greatest turning away from blacks, the greatest disgust towards blacks that we've ever seen in this country. Because people are not going to tolerate being called racists or bigots. They're not going to tolerate their wives or children or family being abused, their property being damaged. They're going to have a massive turning away from all blacks because of the bad behavior of some. And they're going to shut down. You're going to have segregation to an extent because the blacks want it that way. Well, that works two ways. You try and cause forced black segregation like black militias, that's fine. That works two ways. People are going to keep them out and isolated. And then you're going to see, well, where's the economic opportunity? Where are the jobs? Where's anything that you have that you're going to live upon now? Oh, you don't have it because everybody who was smart, that was capitalistic, that gave blacks jobs, that gave them opportunity, that gave them partnerships, they are retreating from these dead zones, New York, Minneapolis, Chicago, wherever it is, and they're retreating to different locations, and they're not going to allow blacks to follow them. That's what I see possibly unfolding, because, and that goes for these white Antifa lunatic leftist crazies. They're all putting themselves on the edge of the cliff. And I think you're going to have a massive social backlash and a turning away, a quiet, they say the majority, the quiet majority or the silent majority. The silent majority in this country are going to be turning away from all blacks and all Antifa left-wing types in a way we've never seen before. Before, people would tolerate them. They'd nod. They'd have conversations. Not anymore, Jim, because of the violence and the hysteria and the anger. People are just going, stay back, stay away, don't come near me. I have nothing to say to you. And they're going to turn away and not look back. I think that day's coming. I think it's already here, actually, Jim.
I think you're spot on, Scott.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Trump has called off the Florida segment of the GOP National Convention, saying thousands of supporters and delegates wanted to attend in Jacksonville, but I just felt it was wrong. We have to be vigilant. We don't want to take any chances. We have to set an example. It's a different world. It'll be for a little while, Trump said, explaining his decision at Thursday White House coronavirus briefing. To have a big convention is not the right time. After a 3-month hiatus, Trump has stepped back into the forefront of the government's handling of the virus with regular briefings aimed at staunching an erosion of support in public and private polls. I don't think it's quite genuine, but here Ben Garrison has really nailed it, drawing the line. No mask, that's where I draw the line, says a citizen. Then after he's wearing his mask, no mandatory vaccine, that's where I draw the line. And after he's been stuck with a needle, a biometric digital ID chip, that's where I draw the line. Then after he's been masked and chipped and vaccinated, he's entering the FEMA Camp Express for re-education. Sad to say, that appears where we're at. And Scott, I couldn't agree more. This mixture of politics and sports is going to be detrimental. Black athletes, black entertainers, they're going to lose their following. You're going to see a great drop in going out to the theater, tuning into sports events. Their massive salaries were all promoted because we were enthusiastic about them, but they are alienating their former fans by the millions.
Well, we see that in Oakland A's. They are already putting BLM behind the catcher's plate. And I've had friends who have said, I'm never going to go to an A's game again I'm not going to be force-fed this BLM propaganda at a baseball game.
Right.
That's where they've crossed the line. People go, they watch sports. I would never go to a baseball game or a football game unless I was physically present. This silliness of watching it, I think it's the death in all modern sport entertainment. Of course, it all can be overcome, Jim, by people who understand the Constitution and their rights and their freedoms to say, you know what, hell no, I'm not wearing a mask. I'm opening my business. I'm opening my stadium. You can all go to hell. I don't need your license. I don't need your requirement. I don't need your permit. The Constitution gives me the right to contract. You are doing unconstitutional, tyrannical ideas, and I'm not abiding by it. And police should be charged with violating and depriving of civil rights if they try and enforce unconstitutional orders. Nobody is really saying that. We were up at a restaurant this weekend where they were refusing. They had a sign that says, we do not tolerate masks. We do not tolerate social distancing. They are an old-fashioned restaurant, and it was packed. They've been packed with people. So people are hungry for boldness and leadership and courage that calls this what it is, massive propaganda. But the sporting events, you're right, Jim, they are going to suffer like they've never suffered before, and they deserve to suffer because of their stupidity. They are cowards and stupid morons who bowed a knee to a bunch of fascists and talk about the pathetic condition of this country's leadership, especially in the GOP, that have not risen up and really roared what this is and have been unapologetic. Jim?
Yeah, I think you got it right, Scott. Exactly
Right
right.
on.
The consequences. Yes, Don, you wanted to add?
No, I'm fine. I'm just saying spot on, Scott. Scott's spot on. He's great.
Agreed. Meanwhile, the president is prepared to send hundreds of federal law enforcement officers to Chicago. This is very appropriate. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot is a total failure. She's an airhead, frankly. 23 people were shot yesterday alone. 14 were victims in a mass shooting at a funeral in Chicago's South Side. Every American, no matter their income, their race, or their zip code, should be able to walk their city streets free from violence and free from fear, said Trump. For this reason, today I'm announcing the DOJ will immediately surge federal law enforcement to the city of Chicago. The FBI, ATF, DEA, U.S. Marshal Service, and Homeland Security will together be sending hundreds of skilled law enforcement officers to Chicago. I say completely appropriate. If weak Democrats won't do their job and protect the people, the real Donald Trump will.
Yep.
Here's an ATF crime gun intel vehicle arriving in Chicago, containing equipment to extract DNA from firearms, leak shootings, trace firearms, and supply results within hours. Following ATF and partners, Chicago police to immediately identify shooters and firearms traffickers. 65 people were shot across Chicago the weekend before the 4th of July holiday, as Mayor Lightfoot pushed for police reform and lectured the city on coronavirus safety measures. And look at this. Once again, we're reminded by imposing the 2016 electoral map over the 2014 murder rate. You can see the areas where murder is prevalent are the areas controlled by the Democrats. Again and again and again. Look at Los Angeles. Look at Seattle. Look at Chicago. It's the areas where the Democrats have created free fire zone, where they won't allow law-abiding citizens to concealed carry. If Trump were to file a national concealed carry law, the murder rate in these areas would drop precipitously. This is devastating evidence that the Democrats have failed the American people on all counts. And frankly, anyone who thinks a voting Democrat really needs help, serious help, because they are detached from reality. Scott.
Yeah, and the only thing that needs to be shown in the advertisements is the burning towns, the burning, looting, the dead policemen in the streets, the policemen with blood trickling down their faces from being hit in the face with these, and the videos of being hit with these Black Lives Matter with big 2x4s show the poor Asians that are the shopkeepers and the 7-Elevens being being attacked and beaten up beyond all recognition by these black thugs that come into their stores, show all of these things. This is Joe Biden's America. This is the Democrat America, where you are a slave to the tyranny of the mob, and you are to surrender all law and order and your property to the communist Marxist violence. This is Joe Biden's America, and this is Trump's America that will end and preserve private property and safety in the Second Amendment, that will return America to peace and stability, and at the same time, Trump's recommitment to not starting any foreign wars, to not starting any mental or new invasions, to returning the American troops out of Afghanistan, out of Iraq, out of Syria, hell, out of Saudi Arabia, all of these places that since 1991, the American military under George Bush Sr., and then again under Clinton, and then under George Bush Jr., the American military is spread out all over the world. And that's not what we should be doing. It's not what American people want. So Trump needs to both defend his non-interventionist foreign policy, his commitment to peace and prosperity, and a renewed relationship with Russia, and a renewed relationship with Europe, and an abandonment of conflict with Iran. I think that, coupled with his commitment to domestic peace and stability, would win him the election, and the Democrats would be seen just as a mad, violent horde. Jim?
Yeah. Well, they're going to try to steal it, Scott. There's no doubt about it. That's their only option. They can't
come home, folks. Bring the troops home. We got problems right here in River City.
Meanwhile, 12 Seattle police officers were injured as rioters attacked police buildings, courthouse, Amazon, Starbucks. This is events that were occurring a few days ago, but they just show how bad the situation is. At least a dozen Seattle police officers were injured Sunday as rioters attacked multiple police precincts, a municipal court, an Amazon building, and a Starbucks. The Seattle Police Department said the rioters were responsible for a significant amount of property damage to government buildings and private businesses. They said arson bomb detectives were involved in the department's investigation into the attacks by the extremists, which authorities said appeared to be very organized and appeared to be a very concerted effort at property damage of certain businesses and government facilities. They highlighted the following details. The group headed south to the Seattle Police Headquarters and Seattle Municipal Court, where they broke windows and spray painted both buildings. They eventually made it to the West Precinct, and some individuals attempted to break into the building. Protesters threw rocks and bottles at the officers who were outside defending the precinct. An unknown person threw multiple large mortar-type fireworks at officers from close range. Multiple officers were injured by the fireworks thrown at them. The march then made its way up to Capitol Hill, where individuals in the group committed more property damage and looting. Eventually, the group went to the East Precinct, where several individuals smashed out the front windows. A large mortar-type firework was thrown inside the lobby of the precinct, causing a small fire. Local journalist Katie Davis Court tweeted a video that showed an Amazon Go building being attacked and wrote, "Antifa militants and Black Lives Matter rioters are breaking into Amazon Go downtown Seattle. The protest has turned into a riot." Meanwhile, Portland moms, this all appears to be completely fraudulent, create a human shield to protect protesters from law enforcement. Portland saw yet another night of violent protests. This is from a story from a number of days ago, as a crowd gathered outside the Marco Hatfield Federal Courthouse, chanted and attempted to dismantle the fence, which they did eventually overcome, as our earlier story has reported. Several videos show the demonstrators tearing down the fencing and setting fires in the areas. Other footage showed moms forming a human barricade and chanting, "Feds stay clear, moms are here." "We're about protecting peaceful citizens' right to protest," said Bev Barnum, the Wall of Moms organizer. But it's all bullshit. There's nothing peaceful about it. Meanwhile, the mayor, Ted Wheeler, is doing the media rounds where he's repeating talking points that DHS protecting federal property and arresting criminal suspects is a threat to our democracy. Meanwhile, the Portland mayor has allowed terrorists to riot for weeks, long before DHS came in. Scott, I think this is just an illustration of how bad it's got, and it's become worse.
Right.
Well, they are certainly falsifying the theatrics by having these quote women dress up as moms wearing yellow T-shirts. They're about as momish as I am reptilian. These horrible beasts of the ugliest description, having the gall to describe themselves as mothers, the most valuable and cherished position on planet Earth for a woman. I think it's just this arrogant mind game that they're trying to play. They've done the same thing by claiming that military people, similarly dressed up as left-wing Antifa, Black Lives Matter people. Very, very, very few military people go into that, and they just don't have that temperament. They stood for the Constitution. They swore an oath for the Constitution, and the Constitution guarantees people's right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. And the Second Amendment, where the mob, these revolutionary lunatics, are religiously obsessed with tearing all of this down. So they're using every playbook they can. They're trying to provoke the police into a firefight. I wouldn't be surprised, and one of the other stories is about the black militia in Louisville, Kentucky, 3 of these people being accidentally shot or wounded from one discharge of a weapon. There's talks about they're going to try and pretend a sniper or a law enforcement person shot at one of their own. That's coming next, is they're going to be claiming that they're being shot, like they did in Maidan, in the Ukraine riots. You had CIA snipers being used to shoot both police and civilians in Maidan, Ukraine, to usher in this revolutionary coup d'etat. And I think the same playbook is they're going to try and play that against Donald Trump, probably after September, after Labor Day, when people get back, when people start paying attention more. That's when they're going to ratchet up the violence. They're going to start shooting their own. They're going to blame it on police. They're going to, just get more into the propaganda. Jim?
Oh, it's so great having you here with your background as a former Intel and PsyOps officer, Scott. I think you got it exactly right.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, a St. Louis couple has been charged with felony unlawful use of weapons. This is just ridiculous beyond belief. The St. Louis prosecutor has charged a husband and wife with felony unlawful use of a weapon for displaying guns during a racial injustice protest outside their mansion. Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner announced the charges against Mark and Patricia McCluskey, who are both personal injury attorneys in their 60s. They also face a misdemeanor charge of 4th-degree assault. Gardner said the McCluskeys' actions risk creating a violent situation during an otherwise non-violent protest. It is illegal to wave weapons in a threatening manner. That is unlawful in the city of St. Louis. The governor has disagreed. And of course, we know the facts of the matter. Hundreds of protesters broke through their gate, poured onto their property, threatened to set their manor on fire, to kill their dog, and even to kill them. The idea that this circuit attorney should be talking about a peaceful protest is absurd beyond belief.
Right.
The governor has observed a mob does not have the right to charge your property. They have every right to protect themselves. The attorney for the McCluskeys, Joel Schwartz, called the decision to charge the pair disheartening. I unequivocally believe no crime was committed. Gardner is recommending a diversion program such as community service rather than jail time if the McCluskeys were convicted. Class E felonies with which they're charged could result in up to 4 years in prison. But it's ridiculous. Supporters of McCluskey said they were legally defending their $1.15 million home. Several Republican leaders have condemned Gardner's investigation, including President Trump, Governor Parson, Senator Hawley, who's urged Attorney General Barr to undertake a civil rights investigation of Gardner. Parson said in a radio interview he would likely pardon the couple if they were charged and convicted. Gardner said Trump, Parson, and others are attacking her to distract from their failed approach to the COVID-19 pandemic and other issues. How pathetic is that? St. Louis, like many cities across the country, has seen demonstrations in the weeks since George Floyd's death in Minneapolis. And the McCluskey's home was initially incidental to the demonstration. Several hundred people were marching to the home of Democratic Mayor Lyda Krewson a few blocks from the McCluskey. Krewson had angered activists by reading on Facebook Live the names and addresses of some who had called for defunding the police. So here we got the Missouri AG filing to dismiss the charges. I won't stand by while Missouri law is being ignored. The right to keep and bear arms is given the highest level of protection in our Constitution and our laws, including the Castle Doctrine, which provides broad rights to Missourians who are protecting their property and lives from those who wish to do them harm, where that, of course, is my home is my castle. Despite this, Circuit Attorney Gardner filed suit against the McCluskeys, who, according to published reports, were defending their property and safety. As Missouri's chief law enforcement officer, I won't stand by while Missouri law is being ignored. Stunning. Meanwhile, Senator Hawley has called for a federal probe of the St. Louis prosecutor.
Yep.
Very appropriate. Senator Josh Hawley insisted a St. Louis couple had the right to defend their property when they displayed guns during protests outside their mansion, and called for the Department of Justice to launch an investigation into the out-of-control prosecutors filed charges against them. It's hard to find a more clear-cut example of the abuse of the law to promote a political agenda than this, Scott.
Well, the McCloskey situation, the Attorney General stepping in and filing a request to dismiss the charges is exactly what should happen. There should be also civil rights investigations because, again, Don knows better than anyone, 18 U.S. Code 241 and 42 U.S. Code 1983 are the statutes or the remedies or the laws for deprivation of rights under color of law. And the law essentially says when an individual is deprived of their rights under the Constitution of a state and the federal Constitution, when they are deprived their rights or their rights are suspended or taken away by arrest, using color of law, using a statute, yet using an executive order, using any color of law to justify the arrest or the gagging or the mask wearing or the deprivation of rights or the taking of their firearms or attempting to coerce and intimidate them to take a plea. When their rights are violated under the color of law, the individual can be prosecuted for up to a year, 10 years if there's injury. They can be sued in civil court. This is what needs to happen to these arrogant black district attorney women who are doing this purely out of a racial animus, purely out of a George Soros allegiance. Let's remember Kim Foxx, who was instrumental in letting Jussie Smollett, the homosexual propagandist who got up there with the two black bodybuilder friends of his and pretended that a noose had been put around his neck and bleach had been poured on him, that his boyfriend Don Lemon of CNN was all teary about. That was told to be a hoax. That was exposed as a hoax. We knew it was a hoax at the beginning, but Kim Foxx, the district attorney, discharged all the charges against him. She needs to be investigated. She needs to be debarred or suspended. Kim Foxx. Now we have this district attorney doing it to the McCloskeys. Same thing used to happen to her. I'll add this too, Jim. In California, there is a district attorney called Diana Becton. And Diana Becton is the black female, and I'll show you the link right here, the black female district attorney who has tried to charge David Nelson and his girlfriend with a hate crime because they saw Black Lives Matter painted on their street, covering up the yellow lines, covering up how traffic is supposed to operate on the street. They thought it was graffiti, and they painted over it black. And Diana Becton, who is also allegedly backed by George Soros in her election, she has tried to charge David Nelson and his girlfriend with a hate crime and vandalism for this Black Lives Matter mural. Now, let me just say this. Diana Becton and the city of Martinez, we followed this. I've met David Nelson personally, Jim. I spent a day with him. And the fact is, Black Lives Matter applied for a permit and got it in 2 days, where this usually takes a month. And there's also reports of, MAGA murals being requested on cities to be painted. If you're going to paint Black Lives Matter, then paint MAGA, Make America Great Again. And that is triggering a nullification of all permits, because they can't choose Black Lives Matter and give them a permit in 2 days and then not give any other group that has a conservative message. So this is what George Soros is focused on, is getting the district attorneys, which are the key pressure points and the choke zones that can be the most effective at targeting and prosecuting and imprisoning conservatives, and I would say anybody who's not a black, lesbian, female judge or district attorney is prey and a target for these women. And that needs to stop, and it needs to stop in a civil rights investigation. Jim?
Excellent, excellent point, Scott. Don, take us out.
Yeah, we must stop right now here for the show. We're supposed to do his first hour here on 7/27/2020. And what a show it's been, and we're going to come back with another hour. So come on back, folks, and share this widely, as we are not on TV anymore. So we love you. See you in a bit.